11 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in this morning to KSJE 90.9 FM, the information and cultural beacon of the Four Corners, broadcasting from San Juan College. Special good morning to our viewers who are also with us this morning live on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. Welcome aboard, everybody. It's good to have you along with us, and showed you a bit about the weather forecast just a few moments ago because we are experiencing some pretty good rain showers out there again today, those April showers again, and we're expecting them off and on throughout the day today. Maybe some other thunderstorms like we had yesterday. 64 for high today, more rain overnight in the forecast with a low of 45. Rain tapering off tomorrow, but still cool. The high 62 on Wednesday before things dry out and warm up on Thursday with a high of 68 and an overnight low of 38 degrees. 70 by Friday, mid-70s on Saturday, and upper 70s by Sunday. Certainly that seems like a little bit more seasonable type weather for our region. Coming up this morning, my guest, Dr. Kim Mizell, is here. We'll be talking about Bloomfield Schools in just a moment here on KSJE, so we hope you will stay tuned for that, everyone. Coming up at the end of the 8 o'clock hour this morning, we'll be talking about adoptable pets, some of the pets available for adoption this week from the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter. And of course, if you're watching the video stream, you'll see those animals that are available for adoption on the program. So we hope you'll stay tuned for that. Then at 9 o'clock, Mick Hess will take us roving with the arts. He is playing some jazz music for us this morning from Claude Bowling, the Suite for Flute and Jazz Piano Trio. That's coming up this morning at 9:06 on KSJE, plus a very special interview about this weekend's Showcase on Dustin concerts to benefit the Arc of San Juan County. You'll hear all about that today during the 9 a.m. hour right here on KSJE. And a quick reminder, we want you to join us right here at San Juan College on Saturday, May 18th for the world-renowned KSJE Zero Mile Fun Run. You can support KSJE, $15. You can register right now at ksje.com and run 0 miles. On Saturday, May 18th, the race will start at 10:30, and because it's 0 miles, you'll be done by 10:31. I guarantee it. Join us on May 18th, everyone, and get a great T-shirt for your efforts as well. You can sign up today at ksje.com. And, of course, check us out on all forms of social media besides Facebook. We're on YouTube, of course. You can follow us on Twitter and check out the brand new KSJE page on Instagram as well. And if you're looking for something to do around the area, we invite you to check out our regional events calendar, which is found on the ksje.com website. The Audrey and Daisy movie is being shown here at San Juan College today, part of our programming for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. There is an Astro Friday presentation coming up this Friday, as well as a May the 4th Star Wars Disc Golf Tournament on May the 4th happening. Today is Botanical Day out at Memory Gardens of Farmington. They're putting in some plantings at Memory Gardens. You can find the details about that event on our website as well. Speed networking taking place on May 2nd here at San Juan College in the Zia Conference Room, followed by a social hour. That's part of the Farmington Young Professionals from the Farmington Chamber of Commerce. So just some of the many, many events you'll find on our regional events calendar at ksje.com. Well, let me turn to my guest who is here with me this morning. Dr. Kim Mizell is here for her monthly visit with me during the school year from Bloomfield Schools. Dr. Mizell, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
Things
having
are
me.
wrapping up for you and your staff and your students. Probably
Yes.
they're the ones really keeping track maybe on
Yes.
things wrapping up.
Yes, they are. They're probably counting down at this point.
Right.
I think we have about 4 weeks and then we'll be done.
Then you'll be done. And I always have to ask you about your perfect attendance program that you have at Bloomfield Schools for the older students. And so how are things looking?
We have 17 students that have perfect attendance this
Okay.
year for up to this date.
Right. And so they are in the running then for the chance to win this car at the end of the
There's 2
semester.
cars that will be
2
given away.
cars. Okay. So that's pretty good odds, I would think.
Yes, it was not as good. Last year we only had it was the flu season got most of the kids.
Oh, no.
I think we had a total of 4 students, so we had 2 cars. So
Well, those are pretty good
really
odds. Yeah,
Yes,
very good.
yes.
But even this is not too bad. And so,
No.
again, it is something that you have brought to the district as kind of an incentive to
Yes.
encourage kids to stay in school and keep their attendance up. And so that seems to be working.
Yes, we partner with Zimes Ford, and they sell us a car at a decent price, and they actually match the difference. So we appreciate that corporate support, and it's always exciting at the end of the year to give the cars away. So, and the kids, you know, they work real hard. This means no tardies, nothing.
Right.
They have to be at school on time. And so they've worked really hard. And this year, my daughter actually challenged herself, and she's kind of been struggling with allergies, but she still keeps going to school.
Good for her. Okay, well.
So we'll see what happens with that. I'm not drawing the name this year, that's
right.
for sure.
Very good. Keep it neutral.
Yes.
That's how you do it. But you have 2 cars, as you mentioned, and I know for the past winners, they're pretty thrilled to get these vehicles.
Yeah. So the 2 that won last year, they were so excited because they had been driving their parents' hand-me-down vehicles, and they were headed off to college, and they were excited to have a newer car. That one girl, she was so excited it had a DVD player, so she was really driving quite a bit of older vehicle than what her parents had given her.
Maybe had an AM radio in the other car. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, so they were real excited to get the vehicles. So
very nice.
It's kind of neat to see that joy, I guess, and excitement.
Yeah. Well, good luck to all the 17 students who are still in the running, and we wish them good health and good attendance between now and the end of the school year.
Stay strong and keep taking the vitamin C. So
right.
You don't get sick.
They still have a few more weeks to do that, so that'll be very exciting. And then I want to ask you, too, about Bloomfield Athletics. You have a tournament coming up, right?
Right. We have the Bloomfield Invite. It's a track meet that we have every year, and it will be May 3rd and 4th. And then we have softball games happening on the 3rd in Bloomfield. We'll be playing Kirtland. And then on Saturday, the JV will be playing Kirtland in Kirtland. And then in baseball, and I'm looking down, so looking at the schedule.
Checking the notes.
This coming Tuesday, we'll be playing Myamira in Bloomfield. And then and that will be varsity JV games. And then on the 2nd, we'll play Kirtland in Bloomfield. So we have quite a bit going on in Bloomfield this weekend.
Yeah.
This whole week and the weekend for sports. So
very good. All right. I want to remind our listeners and viewers, Dr. Mizell and I have an understanding this is an open book interview. So you can always check your notes.
Okay,
you
good.
can always check your notes when you're here with me. So I appreciate that. But that's exciting, and folks can come out and root on the local team.
Right. Always enjoy watching the student athletes compete, and we have some young men that are extremely fast in the track and field area, so we're proud of the work that they've been doing. A lot of them qualified very early for state, and they're exciting to watch in the relays, and amazingly fast, I guess is what I would say. I was never a fast runner, but I can be impressed with what the kids can do now.
Certainly impressive when you see them on the track. So, and representing the Bobcats. So
that's right.
That's great. Well, hopefully folks can get out there and root on the home team and see how they do.
Yeah, we're proud of them.
That's right. That would be great. Well, let me ask you about some other issues that are going on. It's as we mentioned, the end of the school year, or getting to the end of the school year, and we have the state legislative session that has ended. The budget that's been passed, the governor has signed it. It pretends to be good news for school districts, and so you are going to get some extra money next year. But as it goes into the funding formula, and when you look at enrollment and things like that, how's it all going to roll out for Bloomfield?
It's been a difficult budgeting process. We're pleased with getting the additional funding. However, in Bloomfield, we're down 250 students, and so we really actually did not get enough money to cover the salary increases. So we're having to go into our cash balances to cover other things that you can use that money for. Mm-hmm. So it's a very difficult process, and I think a lot of districts throughout the state, I've heard from several superintendents that they're really struggling with. It wasn't quite enough, and I don't. I always wonder how they plug the numbers in, and their
numbers are different than your numbers.
They should do backwards planning on this one. I mean, they should call us and say, okay, what does your at-risk index need to be in order to cover the salaries, for example, and run it through the schools, and then a two-way communication instead of them just plugging it into the formula, and then the shortfall is our problem to figure out. So it's very difficult. And this year they put all of the instructional funds, not all, but part of it into that SEG. Well, I've talked to several superintendents. We went ahead and pulled out what we were allocated last year, so we had at least some money to do our textbook adoption. However, still need more. And many of the superintendents spent that money on those increases. and so they're wondering what they're going to do now.
Right.
So, textbook adoption has become a very difficult process. In the past, we haven't had enough money to buy the materials that we wanted. We had to settle for something that was less expensive. And, I would like to go where we're going paperless with everything, but not all of our kids have access to internet per se, and they do need books that they can utilize for learning. And so it's a difficult balance and challenge with purchasing materials. And
Sure.
So we're hoping there's another allocation coming that will make up the difference, and I'm hoping that will be enough.
We'll see, right?
Right.
That's what you have to do. But certainly exciting to be able to offer your staff the raises that
Yes, and that
they're
is so
worth.
well deserved. I mean, I'm so happy that teacher salary and principal salaries are going up. It was significant. When a normal healthy district, is maybe at 80% salary, your total budget, we're pushing up to 90 now. So it really,
As a percentage of your total budget, you're saying
it's
your
really
salaries and benefits, is that what makes it up?
It's really impacting our budget, which means there's less money for other things.
Right.
And so it's getting more and more challenging.
Got you. And as you mentioned, at the same time, you have enrollment challenges, and
Right.
you're not alone. I think
No.
every district in San Juan County has seen declines in enrollment.
Well, I know that Aztec's down 200, and so was CCSD. I think our families are having to leave the area, and well, we know that because that's what they're telling us when they're pulling their
Disenrolling
students out.
their students,
Disenrolling.
right.
And so they're relocating to where the jobs are, and so it's really impacting our districts and their funding and how the whole formula works towards supporting our schools and communities. So.
Sure. And so as you look at that budget, I guess the idea would be to decrease your staff or hopefully try to meet those needs through attrition and things like that over the summer or retirements.
Right. Well, I started that in October. I did put a freeze on any hiring, and we absorbed classrooms when someone left or mid-year, like or if their family moved, their husband moved, they had to follow their husband. So we
And a teacher would leave too then.
right. They go with their
Sure.
families.
Right.
So we went ahead and about 10 positions, but it wasn't quite enough.
Okay.
So we're still, if someone leaves, we probably won't replace them. We're still staffing quite a bit as far as the need, as far as need for teachers, but like at where we had the reduction in students was at our central primary. It was just first through third, and then at the high school. So it's like a big spread, but it's not in all schools.
Right. Hard to
Right.
see.
Right. And
yeah,
then Aztec had the same scenario.
I see.
So we find that to be kind of interesting. It's like the little ones and the older kids. So we're having to make adjustments, and we're having some serious conversations about, if you don't have the students, you can't justify having all those classes and having only 15 kids in the classroom. You're going to have to load those classrooms up and look at your scheduling, and hopefully, within the law. I mean, we have rules on class sizes and everything, but last year at Central we had some classrooms that were full, and so we took advantage this year of saying, okay, when people leave, we're going to cut out of there, and we have. You never know. It's always interesting because sometimes then they show up at the first of school, so you're
Right.
having to pull a teacher from another school, or you're trying to hire last minute, so it gets challenging sometimes. But I think we did a lot of prior planning, and that helped, but it was just really difficult to gauge.
Sure. Well, you just never know, I guess, until you get the census numbers in or the counts
Right,
in during
right.
the school year, because it could change even during the year.
Right. So, it went from down 65 to down 150 to 250. So it's really hard to gauge sometimes.
Right. And these numbers the state is looking at because that's what's going to determine your budget
Right.
next year.
Right.
I think, too, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yes.
Usually a year behind?
Right. And, they base a lot of information on the census data, which is quite old. I mean, it's 10 years they're getting ready to do a census count. And
The official census.
right,
Yeah,
census.
right.
And so that impacts. They do an average of 3 years with part of the formula is something called an at-risk index, and ours hasn't really changed that much, and I feel like it needs to change, but due to the old data that they're looking at, or the 3-year trajectory has really not benefited us. And I went down and talked to the Deputy Secretary of Finance and said that our at-risk index is a concern, and they had said that that would increase and that would be able to make up the difference for a lot of the districts. Well, it really didn't. And so that's why I'm saying they need to work the formula backwards from the schools to the State Department and say, what are we going to have to do to meet the needs of the schools? If you're very lean and you're running a efficient operation, you don't have any, we're very lean at the top. We don't have a lot of layers. And I know other districts are in similar situations because we've really operated with being underfunded for a long time. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room with that budget, so it's very challenging sometimes.
Sure. And of course, the state, to play devil's advocate just a little bit, is trying to fund districts as large as Albuquerque Public Schools to as small as, I don't know what the smallest district is, JAL or something tiny, on the east side perhaps, and then maybe a medium-sized district like yours.
I would say districts the size of Bloomfield and smaller are really struggling right now.
They're the ones that feel the pinch in these types of calculations.
Right.
Gotcha. Let me ask you a bit about assessments, another favorite topic, because it is that time of year. You just finished up the new Not the Park test, which is happening this year across the state. They've rolled out another state standards-based assessment.
Yes.
And so how do you think your students did with that new type of test? But it was park-like, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was shorter, less time. Our schools are pretty well finished this week.
And shorter is good.
Yes, that is good. And however, some of the observations were that it was more difficult for someone like at third grade level.
Right.
I've heard from my daughter who took the test, and she said, well, I kind of knew what was on it, which was good for her.
Right.
Because it's been a difficult task for many students.
And she's a high schooler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see. I know that they have a task force that's involved with coming up with a plan for what's going to happen in the future, and hopefully, and there's a lot of conversations talk around that, is that there may go back to just doing the assessment in 4th, 8th, and 11th grade, which would save some money. And we have in-district interim assessments that help us to monitor their growth throughout the year. So there's a lot of mechanisms in place in the schools. So hopefully, whatever they come up with is something that's good for kids and good for everybody involved. We've struggled around all the assessments, having it tied to evaluations. That's gone. They're not going to tie any assessment to teacher evaluations, and which I think is a good thing. We never really resolved a lot of the issues around that with, like, for example, teachers in special education, some of our elective type teachers. The evaluation system was not the conducive to them advancing within our system, because they didn't have, for example, they didn't have strong enough VAS scores, which are scores that students that are proficient, like if you're a special ed teacher, it's going to be more challenging to get proficiency in the group. So they couldn't demonstrate that, so they weren't able to move up in level, like increase their salaries. So there were a lot of things that never were resolved with that process and that system. So hopefully they'll come up with something that's a little more conducive. They're talking about going back to the praxis exam, which is what a lot of teachers at the national level, that's what they take. That test isn't easy either, though.
Right.
So it'll be a different scenario for New Mexico teachers if they do that. And there's some conversation around submission for portfolio so that they can move up in advance. And so they're looking at a lot of different areas that they have to address. So it's a good thing, but it's a lot of work. I mean, and a lot of transition and a lot of change. So
Right, which is what we've seen with this new administration, I
Right.
guess, which is really driving a lot of these
Very
conversations.
very different philosophy.
And is the communication been pretty good with districts, or is that still, I know sometimes with between Santa Fe and
Yeah.
and far-flung corners of the state, it doesn't always happen?
Well, I think that, we have to understand that they're in a lot of transition type changes that they're making. I did sit in on a superintendent's conference call, and it was good communication. They were really trying to get the message out and get an idea where the direction of things. I think that they really need a public relations person to help them with getting that message delivery to all the right people and their stakeholders and people that they're working with. Hopefully they'll get someone hired fairly quickly. I know that they're looking for someone. It's just, how do you convey all these changes, and you have a lot of moving parts, and how do you keep track of that? So that person could do that.
Right.
Whereas, they're departmentalized to some degree, but they also go to a lot of the different events together, so they're hearing the same message themselves. They want to be collaborative, and they're asking a lot of questions, so that's good. So
Right.
hopefully, I'm very hopeful.
Good. Well, that's good. Let me ask you a bit about assessments. It's one of those hot topics, I think, where people love to hate them, but it is the tool that you use to see what students have learned throughout the school year or at certain points throughout the school. And so really without any other way to measure that, it's kind of the only thing you have to figure out
Right.
what they have done. And so it's always then kind of the challenge to figure out what type of assessment to use or what type of questions to ask with those students. Is this an important conversation to have at the state level about these types of assessments and what the state should be doing and what the local districts can do?
It's required federally.
Aha.
So if you want to get federal dollars,
You
you
need
have
to
to
do
have
that.
all of that in place.
A certain amount of
Right.
testing every year.
And so the state has amended a waiver. They have a waiver in right now. They're trying to get approval for it. They've amended their ESSA plans for the entire state. And that's a lengthy process. And so it's a little tricky because if you move like you're going to get approved and you're not approved, then you lose federal dollars. So that is a little scary because our state is very dependent on federal money. And so there's certain requirements that they have to meet, and we're all having to live by those because we're heavily funded by the federal government. And so that's where the friction and the tension starts,
I see.
kind of.
Gotcha.
And for example, the state of Arizona moved away from state assessments and chose to use SAT and ACT scores as a graduation requirement. They had sent in a waiver for that at the federal level. It did not get approved, so they lost $320 million in their budget. So it's very serious consequences
Right.
for not doing what they require at the federal level. So that's
You have to
one
proceed
little
with caution, I
Yes.
guess is what you're saying.
One story that I've heard,
Right.
I heard it actually yesterday from two former superintendents out of Arizona.
I see. And this is a state level decision that would be made to do that or not
Right.
do that, I suppose, right?
Yeah, and then, there's the issue with it's a one-time shot type thing, and yes, kids can take it several times, but you have to pay for it. And then also the other part of it is it's changing every year, so it's not consistent. Consistently measuring the same types of things with students. So there's some variables that, I have a concern about. Some students are not the best test takers, but they're pretty good students. And so that's
Or
where
just smart kids.
Right. They're
Yeah.
well, they're hard workers, maybe, or they're the productive ones that, they have to work hard and they do well in school. But then when it comes to that formalized type testing where it's timed and they may not be the fastest reader, well, they're not going to get through a test like that. That's going to be challenging for them. And so what is going to be the cut score for that? Right now, in order to get into college, you have to have a 21. And I think a lot of districts I think ours is at an 18, our average. So we're not even hitting the mark, with some of our students. So It used to be an 18 to get into college. Now it's 21. And,
Right.
and I don't think parents realize that either. So, and you can get in with an 18 with really good grades. You have good GPA. There's ways you get in, but it's getting more and more difficult for these young people to demonstrate what they can do other ways other than a test. I think that there's some beautiful young people in the schools, and they need opportunity, and I think we kind of build in these barriers that don't help them.
Understood. Dr. Kim Mizell is my guest this morning. She is the superintendent of schools with the Bloomfield School District. We are talking about some of the issues facing education in New Mexico today, and there's been a big push about graduation rates and trying to push those higher. And as we talked about attendance earlier, and that goes along with graduation rates. If your seniors are staying in school, they are hopefully staying in school long enough to walk across that stage at the end of May.
Yes.
So how's Bloomfield looking?
We're looking really good. Our graduation rate was higher than the state, and we're the second highest in the county. We're
Congratulations.
second to Farmington High School. Farmington has a good graduation rate.
Right.
So, yes, Bloomfield is doing very well with the graduation.
That's great. And with the attention from the state, is that a good thing to kind of put focus on that across the state to keep school districts working towards it?
That's what's in the federal plan, so that's what we have to be accountable for.
Another thing dripping down from the feds,
Everything
right?
Everything is regulated. It's not like we have freedoms to decide what we want to do for graduation requirements. No, we're all dictated to.
I see.
Yeah, it's interesting how all that everything's tied to money and how you perform. And
right.
So it's a interesting scenario, and it's public education. We're educating all, and we're expecting. Hopefully, we'll move away from expecting everyone to perform at the same level at all times. So
that could be a challenge, I guess,
Yeah.
when you have to accept every student who shows up at your school
Right.
for an education, right? No
Right.
matter what their mental faculties are, or capacity, or what have you, right?
Exactly.
They need special education or what have you. You provide them with some type of education.
Well, and I'm a developmentalist. I've always believed that everyone develops at different stages, and we all grow and decide and mature at different times in our lives, and we have not afforded young people that opportunity to develop and mature at different stages. And so, I understand having the standards and expectations of understanding by grade level. However, not everyone arrives at the same time. And so that is a real challenge in education right now. And there's a lot of kids that are late bloomers. They figure it out by 6th grade. Or they figure it out by 9th grade. They figure it out at different times in their lives.
Right. Yeah.
And also, their personal situation, things change in their worlds, and they're having to maneuver that as well. And so, we just really don't have a mechanism to allow kids to develop at their stages. We were forcing the issue early on, like having to read an 800-word passage in 3rd grade to show proficiency, and maneuver a computer up and down and answer questions and highlight evidence within that text that supports your answer for a 3rd grader.
That's a lot. That sounds like a lot to me. It's been a long time since I was in the 3rd grade, but that sounds like a lot.
I don't know a lot of adults that could do that at
Right.
some point. It's maneuvering technology and processing and reading and retaining and being able to do a written response in a paragraph about that passage, and then also answer detailed questions within the text. It's hard.
Wow. Yeah.
So
that sounds like a lot.
I'm glad we're moving away from that. I hope what they come up with is more developmentally appropriate. That's
Sure.
what I would say.
Okay. And I was going to point out that I think isn't some of what you're talking about being able to be addressed at like an alternative high school or things like that? Is that something that can be helpful at like Charlie Y. Brown?
Yes. We have a real successful credit recovery program at Charlie Y. Brown, and a lot of times, students hit high school and they're overwhelmed, and they sometimes get behind, and so we afford them the opportunity to go to Charlie Y. Brown and do credit recovery. And actually, this year is the first year. We used to have a Charlie Y. Brown graduation and a Bloomfield High School graduation all of the students that are in the cohort for this graduation group chose to graduate at Bloomfield High School this year. Together. So we transitioned them back a month before graduation, and that helps with Bloomfield High School's graduation cohort information. However, CYB has done a great job with those kids, but they don't get credit for graduation. So that's not reported in our reports at the end of the year with the graduation rate for Charlie White Brown, but they've graduated quite a few students through BHS. So
Gotcha.
We're going to try to get that message out that, I think it was a total of 18 people will be graduating from Charlie White Brown that will go graduate with the high school, but quite a few.
Good.
So it's a good thing, and it's a good process. The credit recovery is on an accelerated pace, and we really do a lot of one-on-one conversation with the kids to keep them progressing through the process, and so it's been very successful.
Well, that's great. And as you mentioned, as students maybe develop at different times than their cohorts,
Right.
it's nice to have an option like that in their local school district like you do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so you can help them achieve what they want to achieve.
Right, and initially it was to address the dropout rate, because a lot of times you'll find a lot of the dropouts happen at 9th grade, and because they get so far behind they can't catch up. And so this allows them to catch up and go back if they so choose.
Very good. We had one more topic, I think, on the list to cover this morning, and that is an acronym, I think, of CES. And I'm
Yes.
trying to remember. I hope you remember what that means, because
Yeah,
I've forgotten it.
It's Cooperative Educational Services.
Thank you,
And,
yes.
I'm on the board for this, and they just recently got approved through the State Department an opportunity for educators to get a dual licensure in regular ed and special ed in 1 year. And it's a 1-year program, and so with alternative licensure, you can come in and work in the schools and get enrolled in this program and become a teacher in 1 year, which is unheard of at this
Right.
point. And Bloomfield is a district that will be participating in that. So we have quite a few special ed positions open.
I was going to say, there's a lot of special ed
Right.
positions open in districts all over the place, I would think.
Right. If you already have a degree and you would like to become a teacher,
It's a bachelor's degree, right? Is that what you need?
Bachelor's degree. You can go to the school and apply for a position and be interviewed and potentially be hired and get trained on being a regular ed teacher or a special education teacher
Interesting.
at the same time.
Nice opportunity. So contact the school?
Yes.
Is that how
Yes,
people should do it if
we'll
they're...
get started on it, yeah. In fact, they're coming in and presenting to the whole region. I think other districts will probably participate, but there only have 3 regions that are going to be able to do this year, and this area is one of them.
Okay. Good to hear. And as we just heard, salaries are up
Yes.
for teachers
Yes.
in the new year. So
Yeah,
with the new
first-year
budget.
teachers at 41, a level 2 teachers at 50, and a level 3 is at 60.
It's about time.
Right,
But nice to see.
right. It's
So,
a good thing.
right. Dr. Mizell, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. This, I think, is our last gathering, unless you want to come in for summer school or something.
Oh,
I don't know.
no,
Unless
that's
you
okay.
have plans to get out of town, I
Taking a
imagine.
vacation this year,
Good
so
for you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we always appreciate you being here, and we'll catch up
you.
with you again in August. How's that
Okay,
sound?
sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Dr. Kim Mizell, my guest here on KSJE, and I'll be back with more in just a moment. Everybody, the time right now is 8:45. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, your community hospital with a rich heritage that dates back to before New Mexico was a state. We've been improving the health of the Four Corners since 1910. As a nonprofit hospital, San Juan Regional Medical Center is a values-driven organization. We strive to deliver on our mission to personalize health care and create vitality and enthusiasm in healing. We are here for you when you need us, offering a comprehensive range of inpatient,